Say It Loud Network and Mino Lion Media presents Business First.
And welcome to another episode of Business First with Sonia Alleyne. I am your host, and this is the podcast where we help businesses and aspiring business owners get bigger, better, and bolder in how they think about their business. You know, I have a friend who believes that entrepreneurship is the best form of self-care for a number of reasons. The autonomy that it gives you, the level of creativity that you can have, being able to create something that not only matches your passion, but aligns with your values. You also get to choose the people you want to work with. And for this show today, our guests have chosen to work with each other because they are family. And for a lot of entrepreneurs, that's a major goal, to be able to create a business that your family is interested in, or creating a business that you'd like to be able to lead to your family. And I believe that today's guests have the perfect model. In fact, because of the businesses started by this gentleman, his wife and children have not collected a paycheck outside of the family in roughly 35 years. And that gentleman who is with us today is Donald Clarke, the president and chairman of Asset-Based Lending Consultants, a global commercial and asset-based lending company. He also runs Don Clarke Enterprises, where as a senior instructor and a faculty member of the Commercial Finance Associate Continuing Education School, he has taught over 4,000 students across the globe on secure lending practices. He has conducted seminars for financial institutions such as Lloyds Bank and National Westminster Bank in London, Bank of Ireland in Dublin, General Electric Capital in London, Delhi, India, and Sydney, Australia. He is also the author of Asset-Based Lending Disciplines, the very first textbook on asset-based lending, published in 2006. And if that weren't enough, he and his family have just opened the first of possibly 3 UPS stores. Today, he is joined by his daughter, Simone Clarke Roman, who is very fortunate to work very closely with her dad on all of these projects. And I am very excited to welcome both Don and his daughter, Simone, to the show. Welcome.
Thank you, Sonia. Glad to be here with you.
Yes.
Be here. Thank you, Sonia.
You all are a busy family, and there's a lot that we want to talk about today. In fact, this is going to be our first 2-part show, because in this show today, we're going to talk about what it really means to be a family of entrepreneurs. It's a goal for a lot of people, but it's not one that's easily executed for a number of reasons. People have different passions, different interests, and you all have been able to do a really good job. But first, Don, I'd like you to talk a little bit about what asset-based lending is, and a little bit about your journey in terms of what led you to start this company.
Sure, Sonia. So thanks for having us, by the way. Asset-Based Lending Consultants is a global consulting firm to lenders. So we do due diligence for lenders such as the major banks, Wells Fargo, the Chase, and all the major banks, and some community banks. We actually do due diligence on asset-based transactions before the banks fund them. And then after the banks fund them, we actually do continued due diligence, checking for, to make sure collateral that's pledged to the bank is still in place. And last year, we looked at an aggregate of about $19 billion in loans and commitments to borrowers across the globe, loaned by about 60 banks that are our clients. So that's what we do. That's what Asset-Based Lending Consultants does. Now, my journey. So where do I begin? My journey is really actually started in high school. I tell people high school formative years. I went to high school in Jamaica, Glenmuir High, and in my senior year, I had to drop out of high school because I had no shoes to wear. And I was ready to go on the streets until my principal missed me. And in school, and they sent someone to ask me, well, where are you? We miss you. You're bright. You got a good future. I was mischievous. So I said, I miss having you in my office. Where are you? So I said, listen, sir, I had one pair of shoes. The soles fell off. I can't finish. And he says, come see me. He sent me to a shoe store with a letter. I walked in barefooted. And I came out with a brand new pair of 9.5 brown shoes. And I I used those shoes. I finished high school. I took my general certificate of education from the University of Cambridge, got a distinction in biology and English. I wanted to be a doctor. And that was the first thing. I wondered whether or not I would have been a good doctor because I don't know if I have the bedside manner. But anyway, so I came out of high school. That same principal got me a job with the Jamaican government. I worked there for about a year, but I decided I wanted more. So I came to America, like most of us did, somewhat illegally, and got many, many jobs. One job, I was cleaning bathrooms in New York City when I first got here because I was illegal, couldn't get a good job. Then I got my papers eventually, and I started to work for Bankers Trust as a teller. At 18, I was a head teller. I supervised, I don't know, had 30-something tellers reporting to me. I was 19 then, but then I wanted more. So the bank paid for school, so I went to school, got my degree. Then I saw the bank posting for someone to do audits or field examinations in asset-based lending, and then I applied for the job. The rest has been history. I worked for Bankers Trust many years, worked for a bank in New York, came south, worked for Heller Financial. And then in 85, I'm going to really sound out, 1985, I went to work for Southeast Bank, and I became head of the audit department and one of the key executives in the asset-based area. And I was in the early 30s, had a wife and 3 kids at that time. You know, I call my last real job in the banking space. I was chief financial officer and chief credit officer for Southeast Bank Leasing Company, the youngest black executive in the bank. It was a $30 billion bank. The youngest black executive, had lending authority of $1 million. Myself and a subordinate oversaw, a budget of like $300 million. I had 40 people reporting to me. Something just, it looked, and so let's look back to 1984, 5. I mean,
that's a really good position. You were doing really well.
I was making $50,000 a year. I was getting stock options. I had 2 secretaries, one administrative, 1 personal, and I had an office in the 19th floor of Southeast Tower overlooking Biscayne Bay. What else could you want? To some people, that was nirvana. I just got one day to say, wait a minute, I'm not seeing my kids. They're growing up without me. My wife and I are passing like 2 ships in the night. This isn't working. And I decided to part ways with the bank. We had somewhat of a not so easy parting, but we parted ways to go start a business I thought I knew was asset-based lending. I'd worked all my life in that, and I thought I'd go offer myself as a consultant back to the banking industry. First 400 letters my wife and I wrote to people, nobody responded to us. And nobody,
The first how many letters?
400 letters.
Wow. Okay.
400 sets of stamps and envelopes and hello, sir, hello, ma'am. We took the bank directory for the entire state of Florida. We combed them. We found every senior vice president, every executive. Nobody replied to us. But pressed on, opened an office. Sitting there, I had a partner. One of the other guys at the bank said, I'll join you. Let's make something happen. Sitting there one day playing cards and the phone rang. Phone rang. Got the first job from the bank I left before called us. Come back, come do some stuff for us. And that was it. We started business in 86. Employees, we ramped up pretty quickly. And we became the mainstay, the first and oldest company in the world to do any outsourcing in asset-based lending. We were in 1986. And it's been a real tremendous ride. And so when I started that, I began to feel, and even before I left the bank, I kind of felt like I wanted to be my own boss. I wanted to control my own destiny. I wanted to write my own check. It's not easy. And I had to make that decision to do it when the time was right. In my early 30s, I couldn't, so I started business. We did well. We've added offices in London, in Chicago, in New York, Florida. And then in 1990, I formed Clarke Enterprises to do consulting works to business, to marry businesses and lending together. And then I started teaching Clarke seminars, Clarke Asset Management, and so on and so forth. So to build the business, and I looked for other businesses I could start. I am a serial entrepreneur. I am one of those things. I am always thinking about how do I do the next venture. and I want to have the next successful business. And so, the business expanded. We have employees now, doing extremely well, and my kids all work for me. Now, the good part about this is I must have said something to be desired, because Simone went away to school. She came back, wanted to come work for Daddy and Don Jr. and Dwight and my wife and Simone's husband.
And Simone's husband. So that's just it. So you've expanded into in-laws are working with you as well.
I didn't tell Simone this, but I wanted to keep my son-in-law close. But anyway, so we have a joke about that all the time. But no, it is. And my intent, my hope now. Look, you're talking about my book. I've written, sold all across the globe. People like Chase uses my book to train the examiners or the people in asset-based finance, quoted by Wall Street Journal. So I've kind of got to a place in life where I feel that I wanted my children with me. And earlier on, I thought I set the example, let them see me work hard. Their mother and I work hard, provide for the family. And so that, to me, the greatest compliment that anyone, your children can pay you, they want to come join you in whatever you're doing. So all my kids are with me.
I want to get a sense, how old were you, Simone, when your dad decided to start the business?
I was probably about 5.
You've only really known your dad as an entrepreneur.
Yes. I don't really recall him working outside of asset-based lending consultants, to be honest. I only remember and know him as an entrepreneur. That's all I remember.
And so what has that been like? I mean, obviously you see that he's successful and you see that he's done these great things, but what kind of inspiration was that for you growing up? And because it is hard work. So as you were saying that, one of the reasons that you had quit your job is because you wanted to spend more time with the family. But I imagine even as you were building this, you were still being pulled in a lot of different directions. And so for Simone, what was that like for you? What did you see growing up in terms of what does this work entrepreneurship thing look like to you growing up?
Well, it was definitely hard work. I just watched my dad, get up early in the morning and he'd be out the house and he'd come home and, you could tell he had a long day. But one of the things that I really admire about my dad is even though he is an entrepreneur, he has a very awesome way of balancing it all. I mean, although he was traveling a lot of times and he was just kind of ripping and running and just, maintaining a business is hard work. But what I saw was a man who was an amazing businessman, but an even more awesome father. And he understood the value of family. And that's one of the main reasons why he quit working for someone else. And so he could spend time with us. So no matter how grueling his day was, he always made time for my mom and all of my siblings and myself. He never missed a recital. He never missed a game. He was always there. And it's to be admired because I think sometimes when someone is driven to be an entrepreneur and to provide for their family, sometimes, you kind of get caught up in the whole, the kind of the rat race to the top. You want to get to the top. You want to get as much money as you can for your family and you have the best intentions. But sometimes your wife and your children, they're left behind. And so we never really experienced that growing up. My father was always there. And I tell people all the time, how did you do that? I personally think my dad wears a cape. Because I really don't know how he did this, how he was able to, come home and, just be dad. He never pushed us away. We always, we traveled. We always had family time. And to me, that is my biggest takeaway, that you can be driven and be a business person, have a successful business, and you can still have a successful family life. And so that's my biggest takeaway.
Wow. So when you were growing up, what did you decide? Was there a career goal that you had in mind? Or did you always feel like, you know what, I'm going to go get my degree and I'm going to come back and work for my dad?
Actually, a little bit of both. So my dad is, an amazing entrepreneur, and my mom is as well. While my dad was building his business, my mom was a stay-at-home mom, but she was always counseling somebody. She was always giving someone advice. And so as a kid growing up, I've always wanted to be in the field of behavioral science. So I went to school for that. But I always knew that I had that in my back pocket, but I always knew that I wanted to come home and work for daddy. and it's not a sense of entitlement when I say that. It's just that I know that when I do work for him, I'm expected to work.
Right.
And there's a level of, he gives this level of excellence. He gives off this level that it just makes you want to rise to the occasion. And so when I came home from college, I said, okay, and so I just started just connecting, with my dad and saying, Dad, how do you do this? How do you do that? And so it took a few years, but now I'm at the place where I'm fully in. As he stated before, my husband has been an employee of the business for several years. And so who knows? My kids may want to work for their grandfather. So it's just, continuing the family legacy. And so it's fun. I mean, you'd think with family, you're fighting all the time. Yes, we have disagreements. We're not perfect by any means, but we're family. And so, my dad's heart is just to make sure that the legacy continues. And it is continuing, and that's pretty awesome.
So Don, what would you say is, aside from wearing the cape, so we all know that you're a Superman, but what would you actually say to people? I've worked for family businesses. I know family businesses. It is not an easy, for your daughter to talk about how you've been able to balance everything really well and have the level of success that you've had. What do you think what would you offer to someone listening to this who would want to do the same model that you've created?
And as Simone said, you have to balance yourself between your business and your family. And when look, and Simone knows this very well. We are very transparent when we do business. Family is always with me. We have discussions all the time. For example, we're going off on this new venture and we're going to buy some UPS store. We're closing the first one next month, and we hope to open 3 or 4 or 5 of those. We talk about stuff as a family. I'm always going back to them, and I try not to bring home the negative things in life to them and just let them see the success. But I've learned over the years that they see what my success is or failure. They're a part of it. It's easy to bring them along. I don't have to, and you bring something up very, very correct, very intuitively. Second generation ownership usually run businesses into the ground. Yeah, I could tell you stories. It's very seldom where dad starts or grandfather and then the son or they always seem to be there's failures in the next generation. I don't envision that in mind. And I've drilled into my kids, into their consciousness. You gotta work hard. You gotta be honest. You gotta work hard. You gotta put the time in. That's why every morning I go to work, even when I didn't have to go in. I'm not playing more golf than I should be playing, but I'm always going to the office. I'm always coming home. I'm always doing the things to show them a disciplined lifestyle. You can't just sit up here. You got a successful business and, I'm going to stay home today. I'm not going to work. That doesn't work. You still have to be in the mix. You're working hard, but you're working for yourself. Right. And so, what I'm trying to do now is I want to leave a legacy behind. Not just a legacy in my bio, but in businesses. So my grandkids, my beautiful granddaughter, my grandkids are going to grow up, and if they want to work for themselves, if they want to continue the company dynasty, I'm using the word dynasty here because we're going to build one. They can. They don't have, we own several properties, or we just make sure that we leave something behind. Because I never had anything, so I'm not sure what you had coming in, but I came with nothing. I came to America with a suitcase, with one shirt and the pants in it, and not much more. So I'm driven to be a success and to make my family successful with me. And in the African American community, it's important.
Absolutely. You talk about, you've had, and so we've had conversations obviously before this one, but you've obviously had great successes, but you've had, a couple of failures as well, or a couple of things that haven't gone as well, or challenges. And I'd like you to talk about those too, because I think, sometimes it's important for people to see the entire picture. There were some businesses, or was there one business that you had that didn't do as well as you thought it was going to do?
Mm-hmm. I think in terms of transparency, yeah. So in 2008, General Electric sponsored me to go into the scratch and dent appliance business to help them with their reverse logistics. That time, General Electric, I taught for them across the world. They knew me very well. We think we want to send you up in this business as a minority outreach, and we're going to, we'll sell you all our scratch and dent inventory from floor models from Home Depot and Lowe's. You get them, we'll sell it to you at X amount cents on the dollar. You sell them back, you make a profit. We're going to let you have control of it. We'll give you ownership of the company. We just want to, to be your sole source and provider. Did very well. We did in 8, 9, and 10. We did $80 million each year. We did $250 million in 3 years in scratching and appliances, selling GE brand. But then, as you know, you're not as old as me, but you remember we had a big recession by the time Obama came to office, that big recession there. The housing business crashed. And where do appliances go? In houses. And so, went from $80 million a year in sales, 14 stores across the country, to no stores, losing millions of dollars, to spending many nights thinking, what are we going to do next? But I want to introduce a theory that a lot of people need to know. Because I am a multiple stream income person, that decision we made, even when I got the appliance business and we're doing $80 million a year in sales and we were making all this money, I never stopped doing asset-based lending. I never stopped doing Don Clarke seminars. We never stopped doing Don Clarke enterprises, because multiple streams of income give you the security you need. If one craters, then you have others to look to. And so, appliance world, and that failed. We missed a couple of beats, but here we are again, bigger and better than before. And having learned a good lesson from that.
What was one of maybe the biggest lessons you've learned?
Yeah, and diversifying your client base, like in asset-based lending consultants, for example. When we first started, we relied on only 3 or 4 banks. Well, if they fell out of love with you, then you're out of business. So what I did was, after the first couple of years, I went back to Australia, in the UK, in Europe, building my footprint. That if somebody doesn't like me in Miami, doesn't mean I stop eating. I've got people in New York and Sydney, Australia, in London, England will call me up. So broaden your appeal, broaden your outreach, not just have multiple streams of income, but broaden your sources of income coming from different people. So you're never at the mercy of someone falling out of love with you.
Simone, I love the fact that your dad calls this a dynasty or the building of a dynasty, because it really, the vision, because the vision becomes really big at that point, right? And I don't know if when people start businesses, and I know I'm not speaking for everyone, but for a lot of people, sometimes, you just want to be able to get a business off the ground, and you just want to be able to see it do what it's supposed to do. But what does it mean when your dad says that he's building a dynasty for you in terms of the vision and how big this could actually get?
That simply means, for me, when he says that he's building a dynasty, it's a legacy of hard work, for sure. And it's principles and practices that he has done over the years that we are now putting into place in this generation with my siblings and myself, and passing it on to my children, my nieces, my nephews, because it's much more than just having a great bank account. There are certain principles and certain things that you learn from an entrepreneur that you would be silly if you just throw it out the window. You put it into practice. And so building a strong dynasty is having those foundational beliefs and those standards that you see, and I see, and I take a page from my dad's book every day, because he's a wealth of knowledge. He's a wealth of information. I am going to be 40 soon, and I still come to my parents and say, hey, look at my finances. Am I doing okay? My dad would say, okay, do this, do that. You know what I mean? And so I want to make sure that I'm carrying on the legacy and understanding as much as I can, so that the dynasty can be strong, and not just, like I said, with just monetary wise, but also with principles and practices and with the integrity that my father lays out for all of us.
I'm glad you took it in that direction, because what I was thinking, Don, when you first started talking about how you bring your family with you, I was going to say culturally that's really different. I grew up in a Caribbean household, and the financial and the work talk was always kept separate from the children. That wasn't something that that was grown people's stuff, and they handled that, and you just knew that the bills were paid, and you knew that your dad and your mom went to work, but they weren't, and it's a cultural thing for African Americans as well. It's not, we don't really, I think it's changing, thank God.
Mm-hmm.
We don't really involve the kids and the family in what the finances look like and what the disciplines. You're told to work hard and you're told you have to be, there are expectations for your performance, but in terms of those other things. And so what made you break the mold on that and to do things a little differently?
Right. Because I understood that, the concept of a job, and I don't want to beat up jobs, is most people work for somebody else. So I don't want to beat up job, but I realized early in life that you're not going to get rich by working for somebody else. You're not going to live as comfortable as you'd like to live working for someone else. So, and I realized, Sonia, this is going to be really crucial to people listening to us. And when we talk next week about starting a business, there are businesses that you can start without bricks and mortars and heavy capital. Just what you know, and what I call, soft skills that you've picked up. When I started as a business lending consultant, for example, it wasn't a bricks and mortars business. I didn't have $100,000 to start. I started with my know-how. I had developed and learned something, and I wanted to put it in play. And how I broke the mold is that I thought that if the businesses were to outlive me, I would have to bring my kids into it early, so that they could learn it from the ground floor up on a granular basis. I'll be the first to tell you that it's not always been easy. I've had to strong arm them sometime because it's hard to get people in their 20s to pay attention. They're only focused like a lazy, you can tell right now. I've had to pull them kicking and screaming and, do this, do that. And, I'll say, well, I throw fits sometimes if I didn't end up working hard and thinking hard because I know what it is to fail. I know what it is to be hungry, and I never, ever want them to experience that. And I never wanted them to ever be dependent on others. To make your own rain, then you don't need a rainmaker. To create your own financial paradigm. It's something we can do. And my principle is, I can only sleep 8 hours a day. I got 24. So what am I doing the other 8 hours? I'm not working in a job. Can I diversify myself? So I've kind of talked to my family about it. We've had every dinner table conversations about business and God and business, church and business. Everything was interrelated. And, I'm sitting back now and looking at Simone, almost 40, and the rest of my kids want to be around me. First of all, not all children want to be around their parents.
Right, I know.
Right. But they want to be around us. We spend more time together as a family than you'd ever believe. We're always together. We've taken a trip to Europe. We spent 3 weeks in Europe, touring Europe. We've done so many things that we're still, even now that the grandkids are here and they're married, we're still very close. So everything, and if we do everything together, including business.
Are there any particular things, Simone, that you remember, whether it was around the dinner table or in your travels? Are there a couple of things that your dad had instilled in you that you remember strongly or made a really strong impression on you?
Well, my dad is an awesome business person, but as I said earlier, he's even a more amazing dad. And when we would travel as a family and we would, go to different places and we would kind of let our hair down, a lot of the times, because of my dad's success, many of the places that we went, we were often the only African American people there. And sometimes as a kid, you kind of look around and say, I don't think I belong here. And he always gave us a sense of pride, like, well, why don't you belong here? You know what I mean? And so I always felt like I belong. I deserve to rub shoulders with people who may not want to rub shoulders with me. And so even with us being around the dinner table, he always tell us, you show up first and you be the best. You know what I mean? You always outwork. You always, he always gave us the sense of you can do it. You can do it. And so those are the conversations around the dinner table, and even traveling and even going out to eat to restaurants, these wonderful restaurants. We would still only be the only, Black family there. We would get stares. I mean, it still goes on today, unfortunately, but back in those days, it went on as well. But yet he always gave us a sense of pride that, you know what, I've worked hard for this and we're going to enjoy it. And it's okay to be the only African American in places. And our lifestyle has afforded us these opportunities and these experiences, and it's okay to enjoy it. So that was one of the takeaways I've gotten over the years, just, through family time.
And Simone will tell you, one of the taboos I had, and I'm so proud of them because we sat down as a family and helped them talk about future. And one thing I told him, Simone, I told him that you were forbidden to leave our home and do what? Remember that? You could not, what?
Rent.
You're forbidden to leave home or you couldn't rent. You could not rent a house.
Rent, wow.
You must leave our house and move into your own house that you buy. And I said to them around the dinner table to talk business, if you're going to struggle to pay the rent, struggle to pay the
mortgage,
because it's you. Little concepts like that.
Basic concepts that help build foundation, to help build wealth for our families.
It's build wealth, right. Because you're paying your income to someone else to pay their mortgage. You're not keeping the income and the wealth of the family. It's just simple mathematics like that.
So Simone, for your dad, it was easy for him to go into the asset-based lending because that's where he pretty much come up in banking. How has that been learning, and for you and your siblings, learning the family business when, your degree was in behavioral sciences? This was not necessarily your sandbox, so to speak. Right. So what has it been like to actually learn the family business so that you can be successful in it?
Right. Well, it was challenging because I wasn't the best student in math growing up. I mean, it's okay. I'm more of a literature person and reading and English that I excelled in that. But my father was very patient and just kind of sitting at his feet. And over the years, I mean, one of the things that my mom did was when we were much younger, I'm talking about 9, 10 years old, she would take us to his office and we would see how everything works. I would be looking over the shoulders of the workers and looking at all the numbers. And I remember doing that, helping. Well, back in the day, you would fax over papers and I would be looking at some of the numbers and stuff like that. So learning it as I got older was a little challenging. I've sat and heard my dad teach. He's an amazing teacher, by the way. Teach asset-based lending principles, and of course, just reading his book. And my husband, is an employee there, so I glean from him. I look at his report. When he's auditing different companies, and so I'm able to kind of look over his shoulder as well and learn the family business. So it takes a lot of patience to actually learn it, but once you do, you got it.
So as a serial entrepreneur, Don, you've also done, you're now going into, would this be the first franchise business that you're going into, or was the GE business a franchise opportunity as well?
No, GE wasn't a franchise. But this franchise, the UPS franchise is an opportunity also because think about it for example. There's going to be a lot more deliveries being made. As you can tell, everything shows up.
Absolutely.
At your doorsteps now through Amazon or whoever. And by the way, UPS has an agreement with Amazon to help with their reverse logistics. So there's a tie-in there. So we just decided we own one store already through our philanthropic organization. We're going to buy the first one, and we might end up owning 3 or 4 of these things. And look, as a family, you got to be smart how you do things. We put things in. We'll talk about things like a trust for our kids and our grandkids. So there's things like inheritance taxes and all those stuff don't bring into play. You have to know it and get good attorneys and good accountants so you can make sure you plan things right. Because look, we're not here to stay. I'm not here forever. But I want that when I'm no longer walking around, it's Simone and Don and Dwight and Tura and my grandkids are still continuing, and they don't have to. We also want to build businesses where they don't have to work themselves, but have people work for you. The key success is having folks work for you and not necessarily you working for yourself.
Right. Well, so I'm glad you said that because I wanted to go into the process because there are people thinking about, right, they're watching how COVID has affected business and the economy. And so I wanted to get kind of into your thinking of when you're saying like, what is the next thing? Like what comes into your thought process to go, oh, this is going to make sense or that makes sense or we should do this because of X, Y, and Z.
Right. Smart. I like what you think. Look, I think of contemporary events and look for economic opportunity in those events.
Okay.
So, for example, COVID has changed the way we communicate, the way we shop, the way we buy. So which businesses are taking advantage of a new dynamic, and where do I want to invest? I want to ride the wave. As an entrepreneur rides the economic wave. He or she sees an opportunity based on contemporary trending and say, how can I leverage this situation with what I have to ride the crest, right? When I became the first outsource in asset-based lending in the business, period, full stop. That was 85, 86. And today, there's a multitude of people doing what we're doing, but we were there first. And we carved out our niche and we built our wealth before everybody woke up and realized they could make a buck here. We're already entrenched in this and doing very well. So you got to be somewhat opportunistic to see the trends and to think about it and say, how can I do something within that environment to make money? And so the UPS store, the delivery business, Amazon would be a good opportunity also, because everything is now being, in this day and age, being delivered that way. People are shopping, groceries, and everything else. If you notice, retail stores are closing down. Things are getting sent. It's crazy. This is a new economy that wasn't there a year ago. Right. And how do you leverage it? How do you take advantage of it? So every entrepreneur should be thinking, I might like to do a zoot suit, but if it's not in business right now, let me find, something that makes sense, that fits in the current trajectory of how the economy goes. So you look for opportunities in the current environment.
Right. So I'm sure a lot of people have asked you to be a mentor, or they've asked you questions on, how I should, proceed as an entrepreneur in a particular business. Mm-hmm. What is the question you get most often, or what is the response you often give out most?
Well, people always ask me, I like to go to business, and I say, well, what do you like to do? And that seems to stun people a lot. What do I like to do? Because if it's just to make money that you want to go into business, you're not going to be successful. You're going to have to like what you're doing, that even when it's not working the way it should be working, you're still in love with it. If you're just going in because of a financial incentive, then I think it's wrong. So I would tell people, look, what are you good at doing, and what do you really like to do? Okay. And then I'll drift off, and next time we'll talk about how to conceptualize it. Do you have equity? Do you have money to start? Do you have some kind of intellectual property, a skill that you've acquired? Can you monetize that? If it's a bricks and mortar business, then there's a totally different set of finances needed: equity, support, loan, private equity, so forth. But if you're doing what I did when I started, is intellectual property. It's what I knew. How do I monetize years of experience? So I did, and use that. So I always talk to people and say, what do you have? What do you want to do? Why are you qualified to do it? Do you like it? And then I can start giving advice. I've been asked to mentor people, and they say, yeah, I've done a lot, young African-American guys who want to do stuff. I try to channel people towards what I think makes sense, not a fad, not something that has staying power that's going to be around 10 years from today.
How has the franchise experience been for you? That can be, and we'd like to do a show on franchising. That can be an easy or a perceived easier way to get into entrepreneurship, because the branding is all set up for you. Mm-hmm. The financial model is set up for you. How different has this been from somebody who is used to building businesses from the ground up to now walk into a different model?
That's a great question. And I'm actually having that conflict now, because I'm so used to being the one that sets the tone, that set what we do. And then you go to a franchise and I'm told you can only use our people to do this. You can only use our bank. You can only use our material. And I'm wait a minute, because as an entrepreneur, I'm always thinking of what's good for me and my business, and how can I minimize costs and maximize my income and all that stuff. But so it's been challenging, but the franchises I'm looking at, if you can get a 25-30% return on your revenue, I'm in. You might have to make some adjustments where you think, because most entrepreneurs are independent. They are used to call their own shots. When you become a franchisee, you start dancing to somebody else's drum beat. It's tough. But again, the means is worth, the end is worth the means. You put in what, the time and whatever you have to do to become successful.
For many, entrepreneurial families, next generation always is the business, either in style or the introduction of technology or new methods, new ways of doing things. So you and your siblings having that effect on the business yet, or is it your intention to have that effect on the business?
Oh, we definitely are. My dad is I think I can tell your age, Dad, right? You're almost 70.
Yeah, 70.
Well,
yes,
70 years young.
young. But my dad is really he loves to keep the younger generation around him, and not just my siblings, but his assistant is in his 20s, and he helps out with introducing new technologies and new ways of doing things, because the world is changing. It's going to always change. By the time my kids are grown or my age, I'm sure the world will be completely different. And so it is very important to keep your mind open. My dad's mind is always open to new ideas. He never shoots us down. I mean, he at least gives us a shot to say, hey, Dad, try this. Technology is changing. Why don't you try this? And so he loves to keep the younger generation around him so that he can, really be in tune with what's going on right now in the world and connect that with his business so that it can allow his business to excel to the next level.
Do you ever get a chance to step away? It sounds like you guys are very much intertwined because the family is involved in the business and you have so many discussions around what the business needs are with family. Do you ever get a chance to just step away, or what's your process, I should say? What is your process for stepping away and having that downtime?
Yeah, we got one coming up next month where the entire family is going up to Orlando.
Okay.
In a couple of weeks, and we won't talk businesses. The kids will go to Disney. I go play golf, and we won't. Let me say that. Let me repent. I'll probably talk business, because I can never divorce myself from what's going on, but I won't have any discussions around unless it's something that we need to talk about that's coming up that we are using that same time. Maybe we'll sit around a dinner table, but we take a lot of vacations, cruises, getting away, decompressing, because owning your own business, look, it comes with its challenges. You got to meet payroll every 2 weeks. Simone is a scheduling coordinator in asset-based lending consultant. She's talking to, 30, 50, 60 companies a month trying to get in there, set our people up. It's a high stress job. She's talking to some people are nice, some are not so nice. And she has to represent us and the lenders we represent. And so she's doing that. So we need sometimes to step away and Simone, you're homeschooling right now too, to an extent, right?
Oh my God.
Wow. Another podcast.
Yes. I can imagine all of my friends who are either homeschooling or just because of the pandemic, some people have decided that they're not going to send their kids back to school, that they are going to homeschool. So yeah, there's a lot to manage in terms of work-life balance. What trends are you seeing, or what changes have you seen globally? So you deal with countries all over the world. And so it's important for entrepreneurs to understand that it's really rare if you're going to have a local business in a traditional sense. The world has become so small where social media has us all very much connected. What trends are you seeing, or what do you think that people should be aware of as they enter a business that's going to be global, or that should be global?
Well, yeah. So you have to think about your distribution source. How do you distribute your products? I mean, we're dealing with that all the time. We look at companies that are sourcing material, China, for example, and you have to get financing mechanisms in place, because a company in China, for example, would not give a small entrepreneur a credit line. You'll have to buy everything for cash. So before you start on that, you need to make sure that you have your finances locked up. How are you going to make it work? Because it's not just, you have to have that support, and how much money you bring to the table, because again, and there are lenders now, by the way, and private equity people that are out there now Sonia, that will support business ideas, especially in the African American community. I saw just today, I think it might have been Morgan Stanley. Somebody, I'll take a look at it again. That's pledging like $10 billion for a black woman in business and all that. So there's a lot of initiatives going on where if you have a business idea and you want to compete globally, maybe you hook up with another company. Maybe you yourself can collaborate with a company that's already doing business and kind of feed off their chum line. So there's all kinds of things you can do to do it. But right, global businesses, I've got clients in Australia, clients in the UK. So you've had to know some laws in the country you're doing business in, know the language, know the currency. You have to learn the terrain before you start playing in it, right? And know what risks you're taking before you get into it. So I like to start nationally and then expand it nationally if I could. If I had my brothers.
Right. Don, when you look back, so I mean, I didn't know all of your story. I knew you had come from Jamaica, of modest means, but until you told your story today, I didn't know it. When you look back at that little boy who left class because he didn't have shoes, how do you feel about your entire journey? The woman you married, the children you have, this dynasty that you are creating. You must feel, well, I don't want to impose my feelings on you. I know how I feel, but I'd like to hear how you feel about this journey.
I feel extremely blessed. My faith and the woman I married 45 years ago. Those were two deciding elements that helped me be who I am today. And I feel blessed. I really, look, for a principal to miss me, for all the students in high school to miss me. I wear today on my lapel this pin from my high school pin. Its Latin phrase was Flagrans Veritatis Studio. That was Latin. I took 4 years of Latin in high school in Spanish. And Flagrans Veritatis Studio means in diligent pursuit of truth that leads to excellence. I've not forgotten that. And that man who got me the pair of shoes and said, go finish high school. I remember crying when they called my name to get my diploma. I would walk down the aisle to pick it, weeping like a baby, knowing that I was 3 months away from not making it to high school. And he said to me when he gave my diploma, he said, you have greatness in you. You're going to be great. He believed in me before I believed in myself.
Yeah.
And so I feel, and then I have an amazing wife who supports me. When we were 3 months past with the mortgage and we almost lost our house in this journey. The car that we drove with, the bonnet down with one of my neckties because it wouldn't stay down. When we owed the IRS so much money that we thought we were going to go to jail, and somebody bailed us out and bought us and then gave me back my company and said, you go do it. A Jewish man who must have been an angel, probably still is. So I feel blessed. And because of what has happened to me, I feel that there's a need for me to make sure I capture this magical moment, not in writing, but I embed it in my children and their children's children. So 30 years from today or 40 years from today, then my grandkids and great grandkids can look back at where we've come from no shoes to building this, what I call this dynasty.
It's always fascinating to me when you hear of, like you could wonder how different your life would have been if the principal didn't seek you out, right? Mm-hmm. If he didn't miss you and decide to help you go forward. And obviously you were meant to do some really great things. He saw it in you. And what's more important, right, is that you do begin to see it in yourself.
Yes.
So that you can just do the work that you were put here to do. Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, it was. And everybody needs a little bit of help. That's why part of what we want to do. So we've talked about it. Simone, myself, my wife, is some kind of foundation down the road that can help, some kids who want to, excel, because, it's life is not just about living it about yourself. It's life lived for yourself is a boring life. I'd like to help a person one life at a time to see if we can serve a cause greater than ourselves and help other people get to be. That's why, I got to talk to people and give some time in helping them build businesses so it could be well for them and their families.
Right.
And teach them true and proven principles that I've learned.
So what's next? We know that you're about to open up these franchises. You're going to continue teaching. You're going to be expanding your business. But what do you see next for your family and for these businesses?
The next major investment is getting all our grandkids through college.
Okay.
Because if you do that, because Simone and all her brothers and sisters now have been through school. They're all, again, even when you own your own business, attaining education is helpful to help you be successful, right? And in case the business doesn't work, you got something to fall back to. So the next major step is we're going to buy some more stores. We're going to buy some more franchises. We're looking for investment opportunities. And then we're also going to make sure the kids all make it through university, the grandkids make it through university. And we're hoping that if not all of them, as some of them will step in as we build this trust that we're building and saying, come work with us. And nothing is off limits in terms of no legitimate business is off limits that can bring, as long as it makes sense and it fits within the times and we think it works, I'm not going to try to put whatever. I want to make sure it works as long as it has appeal and we can see it become a revenue producer. We're going to think about it.
Right. So Simone has been nodding her head.
Reliant on any one business. Simone.
So Simone has been nodding your head with everything that you have said, but I also want to hear your thoughts on what the future looks like for you, Simone.
Yes, I have to kind of piggyback on what my dad said. Definitely making sure that the generation behind us is set up in a way that they won't have to worry about, where their next paycheck is coming from, that they'll be able to be established. My parents did it for us. I mean, they saved up for when we were young kids and by the time we were out of college, we were able to, that money was put towards a down payment on our homes. I mean, we were able to purchase so many things because they were fiscally responsible and they were awesome business people. And so, I believe that just passing that on to the next generation, just making sure that they do well, business-wise, when they attend university, if they choose to start their own business or join the dynasty, that they'll be set. That's the biggest thing, just making sure that the generation behind us is well set up.
Well, I want to thank you both for coming and sharing such wonderful and inspiring information to our audience. And we look forward to, Simone ended perfectly because that's what we're going to be talking about on the next show, where the money is and how to be fiscally responsible as you're growing your business. And so absolutely look forward to that conversation. Where can we find you? What's the website? The book?
www.ablc.net. AppleBoyLoveCat.net. We'll get you in contact with me, and our book can be bought there. And you can see all the things that we do, and resume and the people that work for us, and of course that will also lead you to Don Clarke Enterprises. Once you find out the first website, you can navigate that, and it'll show you into all the different things we're doing. We just started DC Markets on the website for them yet, but that'll be coming up soon. We're closing the store. Couple of weeks.
Where will the stores be located?
In Florida. This one is pretty near where we live, and we want to, with these stores, you want to be close. Retail, so you want to be close by. So we're looking. Next time we have one of these in a year from today, we'll have maybe 3 or 4 more. We think we'll see what happens.
Absolutely.
It's got to make sense, and it's got to be for the right price.
Absolutely. Okay. But thank you, Don and Simone, for joining us here.
Thank you so much for having us. I appreciate it, Sonia.
Yes, thank you for having us. It was great. Thank you.
Business First is hosted and produced by Sonia Alleyne. Associate producer, Lauren Turner. Edited by Ken Johnson. Executive producers, Omar Thompson, Andrew Kalb, and Ken Johnson. Find the Business First podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, TuneIn, or wherever you get your podcasts. The Business First podcast is a Mean Old Lion Media and Say It Loud Network production.